Welcome to Sleepy Tales Stories, where dreams begin and worries fade. I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep. So before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from? And what time are you watching now? Now, let's begin this journey to deep and peaceful sleep. In a world where dreams were woven like delicate tapestries, there lived a young girl named Lila. She resided in a small, forgotten village nestled deep within a misty valley, surrounded by ancient forests and towering mountains. The village was known as Dream Haven, though few outsiders had ever heard of its existence. Lila was different from the other children in Dream Haven. While they played and laughed, she often found herself lost in thought, gazing at the swirling patterns of clouds in the sky or the intricate designs of spider webs glistening with morning dew. There was something magical about the way the world seemed to whisper secrets to her, secrets that no one else could hear. As she grew older, Lila discovered that she possessed a rare and precious gift. She could see the threads of dreams shimmering and dancing in the air around sleeping villagers. These ethereal strands were invisible to everyone else, but to Lila, they were as clear as day. She learned that she could gently touch these threads, guiding them into beautiful patterns and stories that would bring joy and wonder to the dreamers. The elders of Dream Haven recognized Lila's talent and began to train her in the ancient art of dream weaving. They told her of a time long ago when dream weavers were revered throughout the land, their abilities sought after by kings and commoners alike. But as the world changed and people forgot the importance of dreams, the art of dream weaving faded into obscurity. Lila spent years honing her craft, learning to create increasingly complex and vivid dreams. She wove tales of grand adventures, heartwarming reunions, and fantastical landscapes that left the villagers refreshed and inspired each morning. The people of Dream Haven cherished Lila and her gift, knowing that their little village was blessed to have a dream weaver among them. As Lila entered her 18th year, a sense of unease began to creep into Dream Haven. The dreams of the villagers grew darker, filled with shadows and whispers of impending doom. Lila worked tirelessly to combat these nightmares, weaving dreams of hope and courage. But she could feel something sinister pushing against her efforts. One stormy night, as Lila sat by her window, watching the rain lash against the glass, she noticed something strange. The dream threads that usually floated gently through the air were agitated, twisting and coiling like snakes. She squinted trying to make sense of the chaos, when suddenly a figure emerged from the darkness outside. It was an old woman, her silver hair wild and unkempt, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Lila felt a chill run down her spine as the woman raised a gnarled finger and pointed directly at her. In that moment, Lila knew that her life was about to change forever. The old woman's voice carried on the wind, raspy and urgent. Lila, last of the dream weavers, your time has come. The world beyond Dreamhaven is falling into darkness, and you alone have the power to save it. You must leave this place and embark on a perilous journey to rekindle the art of dream weaving before it's too late. Lila's heart raced as the implications of the old woman's words sank in. She had never ventured beyond the boundaries of Dreamhaven, and the thought of leaving everything she knew behind filled her with fear. But deep down, she understood that this was her destiny. As the storm raged on, Lila packed a small bag with essentials and penned a heartfelt note to her family and friends. With tears in her eyes, she slipped out of her home and made her way to the edge of the village. The old woman was waiting for her there, a crooked smile on her face. "Are you ready, child?" the woman asked, her voice softer now. Lila took a deep breath and nodded. Together, they stepped into the misty forest, leaving behind the only world Lila had ever known. As they walked, the old woman began to speak, revealing the true nature of Lila's quest. "Long ago," she said, "dream weavers were the guardians of humanity's collective imagination. Their work kept the balance between reality and fantasy, allowing people to process their fears, nurture their hopes, and explore the depths of their creativity. But a dark force has been growing, feeding on nightmares and despair." Lila listened intently as they made their way through the dense undergrowth. The old woman continued, "This darkness seeks to extinguish the light of dreams, trapping the world in a state of hopeless slumber. You, Lila, are the last dream weaver with the power to stop it. But to do so, you must first awaken the dormant abilities in others who have the potential to become dream weavers." As the first rays of dawn began to pierce through the canopy above, Lila felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. She was leaving behind everything she had ever known, stepping into a world full of danger and uncertainty. But she was also embarking on the greatest adventure of her life, one that would test her skills, her courage, and her heart. The old woman stopped at a fork in the path and turned to Lila. "This is where our paths diverge, young one. Remember, the power of dreams lies within you. Trust in your abilities, and let your heart guide you. We will meet again when the time is right. With those words, the old woman vanished into the mist, leaving Lila alone at the crossroads. The young dream weaver took a moment to center herself, feeling the threads of dreams swirling around her. Then, with determination in her eyes, she chose a path and set forth on her journey, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Lila ventured deeper into the unknown, she couldn't help but wonder what adventures awaited her. Little did she know that her quest would take her to the farthest corners of the world, where she would encounter both allies and enemies, face her deepest fears, and discover the true extent of her powers. The last dream weaver had taken her first steps towards saving the world, one dream at a time. Lila's journey led her through dense forests and over rolling hills, each step taking her further from the familiar comforts of Dreamhaven. As days turned into weeks, she found herself approaching a sprawling city unlike anything she had ever seen. Towering buildings of glass and steel stretched towards the sky, their surfaces reflecting the setting sun in a dazzling display of color. This was Lumina, the city of forgotten dreams. As Lila entered its bustling streets, she was overwhelmed by the sights, sounds, and smells that assaulted her senses. People rushed by in a blur, their faces etched with worry and fatigue. The air hummed with the constant noise of traffic and machinery. But what struck Lila most was the absence of dream threads. In Dreamhaven, the air had always been alive with shimmering strands of dreams, even during waking hours. Here, she could barely discern a few weak, fraying threads drifting aimlessly above the crowds. As night fell, Lila found herself in a small park, a rare oasis of green amidst the urban landscape. She sat on a bench, watching as the city's inhabitants hurried home, their eyes downcast and shoulders slumped. It was then that she noticed a young boy, no more than 10 years old, sitting alone by a fountain. Curious, Lila approached him. "Hello," she said softly. "Are you all right?" The boy looked up, his eyes wide with surprise. It was clear that he wasn't used to strangers showing concern. I can't sleep," the boy admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't been able to for days. The nightmares, they're too scary." Lila's heart went out to the child, and she sat down beside him. "What's your name?" she asked gently. Theo, the boy replied. Lila smiled warmly. Well, Theo, would you like me to tell you a story? It might help you sleep. Theo nodded eagerly, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Lila closed her eyes and reached out with her senses, feeling for the weak dream threads around them. As she began to speak, she wove the threads into a tapestry of wonder and adventure. Once upon a time, she began, there was a brave knight named Sir Theo. He lived in a magical kingdom where the trees whispered secrets and the rivers sang lullabies. Sir Theo was known throughout the land for his kindness and courage. As Lila spun her tale, she noticed more people gathering around, drawn by the soothing cadence of her voice and the vivid imagery of her story. Adults and children alike stood transfixed, their worried expressions melting away as they lost themselves in the narrative. One day, Lila continued, Sir Theo discovered a dragon living in a cave near his village. But this wasn't an ordinary dragon. This dragon was afraid of the dark and couldn't sleep at night. The villagers were terrified, thinking the dragon's roars were threats, when really, the poor creature was just crying out for help. Theo leaned in closer, his eyes wide with wonder. Lila could see the dream threads around him growing stronger, weaving themselves into colorful patterns as her story progressed. Sir Theo decided to help the dragon. He brought the gentlest artisans in the kingdom to the cave, and together they crafted a magnificent chandelier of glowing crystals. When they hung it in the dragon's lair, it filled the cave with a warm, comforting light. As Lila's story neared its end, she noticed that Theo's eyelids were growing heavy. The dream threads around him had formed a cocoon of soft, golden light. From that day forward, the dragon and the villagers became the best of friends. And every night, as the dragon drifted off to sleep, bathed in the gentle glow of the chandelier, it would think of its brave friend Sir Theo and the kindness he had shown. Lila's voice trailed off as Theo finally succumbed to sleep, a peaceful smile on his face. The gathered crowd began to disperse, many of them yawning and rubbing their eyes. As they left, Lila could see their dream threads growing stronger and more vibrant. A woman approached Lila, gently lifting the sleeping Theo into her arms. "Thank you," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "He hasn't slept peacefully in months. None of us have. Your story, it was like magic." Lila smiled, realizing that she had just taken the first step in her mission to reawaken the power of dreams. But as she watched the woman carry Theo away, she felt a chill run down her spine. In the shadows of a nearby alley, she glimpsed a figure watching her intently, its eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. The figure vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Lila with a sense of unease. She knew now that her presence in Lumina hadn't gone unnoticed, and that the forces working against her were already aware of her arrival. Over the next few days, Lila wandered the streets of Lumina, seeking out those in need of dreams. She told stories in parks, in homeless shelters, and on street corners. Wherever she went, she left behind a trail of strengthened dream threads and peaceful sleepers. But as her influence grew, so did the opposition. Lila began to notice strange, shadowy creatures lurking at the edges of her vision. They seemed to feed on the fear and despair of the city's inhabitants, growing stronger as dreams weakened. One evening, as Lila was about to begin a story for a group of weary office workers in a small cafe, the lights suddenly flickered and went out. A cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing candles and plunging everyone into darkness. In the ensuing panic, Lila heard a voice, low and menacing, whispering in her ear, "You cannot win, Dreamweaver. This city belongs to us now. Leave or face the consequences." Lila's heart raced, but she stood her ground. She knew that she couldn't abandon these people to their nightmares. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak, her voice clear and unwavering in the darkness. "In the heart of the deepest, darkest forest," she began, "there was a tree unlike any other. Its branches reached towards the heavens, and its roots delved deep into the earth. This tree was the source of all light in the world." As Lila's story unfolded, a soft glow began to emanate from her, pushing back the shadows. The cafe patrons listened in awe as she wove a tale of courage, hope, and the triumph of light over darkness. By the time Lila finished her story, the oppressive atmosphere had lifted. The lights flickered back to life, revealing a room full of people with tears in their eyes and hope in their hearts. The shadowy presence had been driven away, at least for now. But Lila knew that this was only the beginning. The forces of darkness were strong in Lumina, and she would need help if she hoped to restore the power of dreams to the entire city. As she left the cafe, her mind raced with questions. Who were these shadow creatures? What had happened to make the people of Lumina forget how to dream? As she pondered these mysteries, Lila found herself drawn to an old, abandoned theater at the heart of the city. Something about the building called to her, as if it held secrets crucial to her quest. With a deep breath, she pushed open the creaking doors and stepped into the musty darkness within. Little did Lila know that behind those doors lay not only answers, but also her greatest challenge yet. One that would test her skills as a dream weaver to their very limits. As Lila stepped into the abandoned theater, a cloud of dust swirled around her feet. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and faded memories. Moonlight filtered through cracks in the boarded-up windows, casting eerie shadows across the once grand interior. Lila made her way down the aisle, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The rows of tattered velvet seats seemed to whisper long-forgotten stories. As she approached the stage, she felt a familiar tingling sensation, the presence of dream threads, stronger here than anywhere else she had encountered in Lumina. Climbing onto the stage, Lila closed her eyes and reached out with her senses. The dream threads here were old and tangled, like cobwebs that had been undisturbed for years. But beneath the dust and neglect, she could feel a pulsing energy, as if the very heart of Lumina's dreams lay dormant within these walls. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence, causing Lila to jump. "I wondered when you would find your way here, young dream weaver." Lila spun around to see an elderly man emerging from the shadows backstage. His eyes twinkled with a mixture of wisdom and mischief, and despite his advanced age, he moved with a dancer's grace. "Who are you?" Lila asked, her voice echoing in the empty theater. The old man smiled, spreading his arms wide. "I am Thaddeus, once the greatest actor and storyteller in all of Lumina. This theater, it was my home, my stage, my entire world." As Thaddeus spoke, the air around him shimmered, and Lila gasped as she saw dream threads swirling around him, faint and fragile, but undeniably present. "You're a dream weaver," Lila breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Thaddeus nodded, a hint of sadness in his smile. "I was, once upon a time, but those days are long past. The people of Lumina have forgotten how to dream, and with each passing year, my powers have waned." Lila's heart raced with excitement. Here, at last, was someone who could help her understand what had happened to this city of forgotten dreams. Thaddeus gestured for Lila to sit, and with a wave of his hand, 2 comfortable armchairs appeared on the stage. As they settled in, the old actor began to tell his tale. Long ago, he began, his voice taking on the rich tones of a master storyteller. Lumina was a city of dreamers. Every night, the sky would come alive with shimmering threads of imagination, woven by a guild of dream weavers who called this theater their home. As Thaddeus spoke, the dusty stage around them seemed to transform. Lila could almost see the theater as it once was, alive with color, light, and the magic of dreams. "We performed great works here," Thaddeus continued, his eyes misting with nostalgia. "Plays and stories that would inspire the entire city to dream bigger and brighter. But then, everything changed. The illusion faded, and the theater returned to its dilapidated state." Thaddeus's voice grew heavy with sorrow. "It began slowly at first. People became too busy, too stressed to remember their dreams. They stopped coming to the theater, stopped telling stories to their children. The dream threads grew weaker, and one by one, the dream weavers lost their powers." Lila leaned forward, captivated by the tale. But what caused it? Why did people stop dreaming? Thaddeus sighed deeply. Progress, they called it. The city grew larger, more industrial. People became obsessed with productivity, with making money, with getting ahead. They forgot the importance of imagination, of wonder, of dreams. As he spoke, Lila became aware of a growing darkness at the edges of her vision. The shadows in the corners of the theater seemed to deepen, to move with a life of their own. And in the absence of dreams, Thaddeus whispered, his voice barely audible, something else moved in to fill the void. The nightmares. At the mention of this word, a cold wind swept through the theater. Lila shivered, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders. The nightmares feed on fear, on despair, on the absence of hope, Thaddeus explained. As the people of Lumina forgot how to dream, the nightmares grew stronger. They infest the city now, keeping people trapped in a cycle of joyless sleep and anxious waking. Lila's mind raced as she processed this information. The shadowy figures she had glimpsed, the oppressive atmosphere that hung over the city. It all made sense now. "But you're here now," Thaddeus said, a spark of hope lighting up his aged face. "A true dream weaver, with powers stronger than any I've seen in decades. Perhaps it's not too late to save Lumina." Lila felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. "How?" she asked. "How can I fight these nightmares and bring dreams back to an entire city. Thaddeus stood, his movements suddenly energized. He walked to the center of the stage and gestured for Lila to join him. "The answer lies in this very theater," he said. "Beneath our feet is the heart of dreams, a wellspring of creative energy that once powered all the dreams in Lumina. If we can reawaken it, we might be able to drive back the nightmares and remind the people how to dream again." Lila's excitement grew. How do we reawaken it? Thaddeus's expression turned serious. It won't be easy. The heart has been dormant for years, and the nightmares will do everything in their power to stop us. We'll need to perform the greatest story ever told, a tale so captivating, so full of wonder and hope, that it will pierce through the veil of despair that hangs over Lumina. As if in response to his words, the shadows around them seemed to grow more menacing. Lila could hear faint whispers, cold laughter that sent chills down her spine. "We don't have much time," Thaddeus said urgently. "The nightmares know you're here now, and they'll be gathering their strength. We need to prepare to craft our story and to find others who might still have a spark of dream weaving within them." Lila nodded, her determination growing. She thought of Theo, of the weary office workers, of all the people in Lumina living without the joy and inspiration of dreams. "Where do we start?" she asked. Thaddeus smiled, a glimmer of his old showmanship returning to his eyes. "First, my dear, we need to bring this old theater back to life. It's time to raise the curtain on the most important performance Lumina has ever seen." As they set to work, clearing away cobwebs and repairing broken seats, Lila could feel the dream threads around her, growing stronger. For the first time since arriving in Lumina, she felt a true sense of hope. But outside the theater, unnoticed by Lila and Thaddeus, a pair of glowing red eyes watched from the shadows. The nightmares were gathering, preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of not just Lumina, but perhaps the entire world of dreams. As Lila swept the stage, her mind brimming with ideas for their grand performance, she had no idea of the challenges that lay ahead. Challenges that would test not only her skills as a dream weaver, but the very essence of who she was. As dawn broke over Lumina, Lila and Thaddeus stood at the entrance of the old theater, surveying their work. The building still showed signs of age and neglect, but there was a new energy about it, a sense of purpose and possibility that hadn't existed just a day before. "We've made a good start," Thaddeus said, his voice filled with cautious optimism. But to truly awaken the heart of dreams, we'll need more than just the two of us. We need to find others in Lumina who still have the spark of dream weaving within them. Lila nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. But how do we find them? In a city this big, where do we even begin to look? Thaddeus smiled, a twinkle in his eye. Ah, my dear, that's where the magic of storytelling comes in. We'll weave a tale so enticing, so irresistible, that it will call to those with the gift. They won't be able to resist its pull. With that, the old actor stepped out onto the street, his posture straight and proud despite his years. He cleared his throat and began to speak, his voice carrying with a strength that belied his age. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gather around and listen well, for I have a tale to tell of wonder and magic, of dreams long forgotten and adventures yet to come. As Thaddeus spoke, Lila could see dream threads beginning to swirl around him, shimmering in the early morning light. Passers-by slowed their hurried pace, drawn in by the old man's words. In the heart of our fair city, Thaddeus continued, his voice rising and falling with the cadence of a master storyteller. There lies a secret place where dreams are born and nightmares are banished. A place where the impossible becomes possible, and where the stories of our hearts come to life. A small crowd had begun to gather now, their eyes wide with wonder. Lila watched in amazement as faint, gossamer thin dream threads began to appear around some of the listeners. But this magical place has fallen into shadow, Thaddeus intoned, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. The dreams have faded. The stories have been forgotten. Yet hope remains. For there are those among us, dreamers, storytellers, weavers of wonder, who have the power to rekindle the flame of imagination. As the crowd grew larger, Lila noticed a few individuals who seemed particularly affected by Thaddeus's words. A young woman with paint-stained hands clutched a sketchbook to her chest, her eyes shining with unshed tears. An elderly librarian nodded along, a knowing smile on his face. A street musician's fingers twitched, as if longing to play a melody only he could hear. Thaddeus's voice rose to a crescendo. If you can feel the pull of stories untold, if you've ever woken from a dream so vivid you could taste it, if you believe in the power of imagination to change the world, then join us. Come to the old theater at midnight and help us weave the greatest dream Lumina has ever known. As Thaddeus finished his speech, the crowd erupted into applause. Lila could see the dream threads growing stronger around several people in the audience. As the crowd began to disperse, these individuals lingered, their eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Lila approached them gently, introducing herself and explaining more about their mission. To her delight, she discovered that each of them had latent dream-weaving abilities they had long suppressed or forgotten in the dreary atmosphere of Lumina. Maya, the young artist, spoke of vivid visions that filled her mind as she painted, but which always seemed to fade before she could capture them on canvas. Elias, the librarian, confessed to hearing whispers from the books at night, stories longing to be told. And Zephyr, the street musician, described melodies that came to him in his sleep, only to slip away with the morning light. As Lila listened to their stories, she felt a surge of hope. With these dreamers by their side, perhaps they truly could reawaken the heart of dreams, but their jubilation was short-lived. As the group made their way back to the theater, the sky suddenly darkened. A chill wind whipped through the streets, carrying with it whispers of doubt and fear. Lila gasped as she saw shadowy tendrils creeping along the ground, reaching out towards the newly awakened dreamers. The nightmares were making their move, trying to snuff out the spark of imagination before it could grow into a flame. "Quick!" Lila shouted, ushering the group towards the theater. "Inside! Now!" They raced through the doors, slamming them shut just as the shadows reached the steps. Inside, they could hear an unearthly howling, the sound of the nightmare's fury at being thwarted. Panting and wide-eyed, the group huddled together on the stage. Thaddeus looked grave as he surveyed their frightened faces. "I'm afraid our task may be even more difficult than we imagined," he said solemnly. "The nightmares are strong, and they will not give up Lumina without a fight." Lila felt a moment of doubt. How could they possibly hope to defeat such a powerful force? But then she looked at the faces around her. Maya clutching her sketchbook like a lifeline. Elias straightening his glasses with determination. Zephyr's fingers tapping out a defiant rhythm on his leg. "We can do this," Lila said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Together, we have the power to bring dreams back to Lumina. We just need to believe in ourselves and in the stories we have to tell." As the others nodded in agreement, Lila could see the dream threads around them, growing brighter, intertwining and strengthening each other. "Now," she said, a smile spreading across her face, "let's start weaving the greatest dream this city has ever seen." over the next few hours, the theater came alive with creativity. Maya's sketches flew across pages, bringing fantastic creatures and landscapes to life. Elias recited forgotten legends and myths, his words painting vivid pictures in the air. Zephyr's music filled the space, a soundtrack to their burgeoning dream. And at the center of it all, Lila and Thaddeus worked to weave these elements together into a cohesive story, a tale of hope, courage, and the enduring power of imagination. As midnight approached, they could hear a commotion outside. Peeking through the curtains, they saw a crowd gathering in front of the theater. Some looked excited, others skeptical, but all seemed drawn by the promise of something extraordinary. "It's time," Thaddeus said, straightening his jacket. "Are we ready?" Lila looked at her newfound companions, saw the mixture of fear and excitement in their eyes, and felt it mirrored in her own heart. They were about to attempt something that hadn't been done in Lumina for generations. To weave a dream so powerful it could change the very fabric of the city. "Ready or not," she said, taking a deep breath, "it's time to raise the curtain." As they prepared to face the audience and begin their grand performance, none of them noticed the pair of glowing red eyes watching from the deepest shadows of the theater. The nightmares were not about to give up their hold on Lumina without a fight, and the battle for the city's dreams was about to begin in earnest. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the fate of Lumina hung in the balance. As Lila stepped forward to greet the audience, she knew that everything she had learned as a dream weaver had led her to this moment. It was time to weave the most important dream of her life. As the curtain rose, a hush fell over the packed theater. Lila stood center stage, her heart pounding, but her voice steady as she began to weave their tale. Once upon a time, in a city much like our own, there lived a child who had forgotten how to dream. As Lila spoke, Maya's illustrations came to life, projected onto gossamer thin screens that shimmered like dream threads. Zephyr's music swelled, perfectly underlining each emotional beat of the story. Elias's voice joined Lila's, adding depth and richness to the narrative. The tale they wove was one of a young hero's journey through a world of faded imagination. It spoke of battles against shadows that whispered doubts, of friendships forged in the face of adversity, and of the power of creativity to light up even the darkest corners of the mind. As the story unfolded, Lila could see the dream threads in the theater growing stronger, brighter. They reached out from the stage, gently enveloping the audience. People who had entered with dull, tired eyes now sat transfixed, their faces alive with wonder. But halfway through the performance, a chill wind swept through the theater. The shadows in the corners began to writhe and grow, taking on monstrous forms. The nightmares had arrived, determined to stop the reawakening of Lumina's dreams. Gasps of fear rippled through the audience as shadowy tendrils reached towards them. For a moment, Lila faltered, her voice catching in her throat. But then she felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Thaddeus, his eyes shining with determination. "Don't stop now," he whispered. "The story is our weapon. Believe in it." Drawing strength from his words and the presence of her fellow dreamers, Lila took a deep breath and continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. And in that darkest hour, when all seemed lost, the hero remembered a simple truth, that within every heart lies the power to create, to imagine, to dream. As Lila spoke, the dream threads around her began to glow with an intense golden light. They shot out across the theater, forming a protective barrier between the audience and the encroaching shadows. The battle raged as Lila and her companions poured every ounce of their creativity and passion into the performance. Maya's illustrations became more vivid, depicting scenes of light triumphing over darkness. Zephyr's music rose to a crescendo, filling the air with notes of hope and defiance. Elias's voice boomed with the power of ancient legends. And through it all, Lila wove the threads of the story, each word a shimmering strand in a tapestry of imagination. As they neared the climax of the tale, Lila felt a surge of energy beneath her feet. The stage began to glow, pulsing with a warm, golden light. She realized with a jolt of excitement that the heart of dreams was awakening. With a final, triumphant flourish, Lila brought the story to its conclusion. And so, the hero discovered that the power to change the world had been within them all along. For in the realm of dreams, anything is possible if only we have the courage to imagine it. As the last word left her lips, a blinding flash of light erupted from the stage. It swept through the theater, through the streets outside, spreading across Lumina in a wave of pure, creative energy. The nightmares shrieked as the light touched them, dissolving into wisps of harmless shadow. The audience gasped in awe as dream threads, vibrant and alive, filled the air around them. As the light faded, Lila looked out over the crowd. Gone were the dull, tired expressions she had seen when they entered. Now, every face shone with wonder, hope, and the rekindled spark of imagination. Outside, the city was transforming. The gray, oppressive atmosphere was lifting, replaced by a vibrant energy. People spilled out of their homes, laughing and sharing the dreams they'd long forgotten. In the days that followed, Lumina bloomed with creativity. Art filled the streets, music floated on the air, and everywhere people shared stories with a passion that had been absent for far too long. The old theater became a beacon of imagination, with Lila, Thaddeus, and their fellow dreamers teaching others the art of dream weaving. Slowly but surely, the guild was reborn, stronger and more diverse than ever before. As for Lila, she knew her journey wasn't over. There were other cities out there, other places where dreams had faded and nightmares lurked. But now she had hope, and the knowledge that with creativity, courage, and a little bit of magic, even the deepest shadows could be banished. And so, the last Dreamweaver became the first of a new generation, ready to ensure that the power of imagination would never again be forgotten. As she stood on the roof of the theater, one starlit night, watching dream threads shimmer across the revitalized city, Lila smiled. She had found her purpose, her home, and a future filled with endless possibilities. For in Lumina and in her heart, the dream lived on,